from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
Good evening and welcome to the National News broadcast, bringing to you live from the National News Studio here at the ChannelEye Rupavahini Corporation. We are ready to bring you the top stories here at home and around the world. I am Sharitha Minupurarachi.
A very good evening to you. I'm Sharifa Dahir and we take a look at the headlines first.
President says the economic bankruptcy status will be revoked by September following the domestic and foreign debt restructuring. President assures that the domestic debt restructuring will not affect any bank deposits, related interests or the employees' provident fund. Minister Sabri emphasizes the importance of a global debt restructuring architecture for emerging economies. The final Aswasuman list will be compiled following the appeal process. A new battle to control the whitefly threat. President Putin says a civil war in Russia was averted.
We now move on to those and other stories in detail. Now we take a look at local stories first. President Ranil Wickremesinghe assured that the restructuring of domestic debt will have no impact on the existing bank deposits and related interests.
He also assured that restructuring process will not affect the banking system stability or the stability of any public or private bank. The President made these remarks while inaugurating the Gampaha District Secretariat Administrative Complex. The President assured that the restructuring of domestic debt will have no impact on the membership balance of any public funds, including the EPF. He emphasized that the rate of return for the superannuation funds will be affected. Furthermore, the President said that the restructuring of domestic debt will not pose any threat to the stability of the country's banking system, whether it be public or private banks. He especially mentioned that the deposits of more than 50 million bank deposits will remain unaffected and there will be no changes to the current interest rates paid on bank deposits. The President also noted that domestic debt at the time stood at $42,100 million, which constitutes 64.6% of the GDP. The President highlighted the urgency of restructuring the country's debt, mentioning that without such measures, the public debt will exceed 100% of the GDP by 2035. He emphasized that the foreign creditors have already expressed their agreement to participate in the debt restructuring process. To ensure debt sustainability in Sri Lanka, the President emphasized the need for restructuring both external and domestic debt. Acknowledging the significant burden carried by foreign creditors, he mentioned that the country is set to receive $17 billion from them in the next 5 years. The President emphasized the importance of local creditors also contributing to this effort. The proposed debt restructuring plan has been designed with the primary objective of safeguarding the public's bank interest. The President underlined the responsibility of protecting the depositors of all banks regulated by the central bank. He assured that the proposed domestic debt restructuring method poses no harm to bank deposits and will not lead to a collapse of the banking system. The President further said that the country's economic recovery, reduction of interest rates, the government's ability to provide subsidies easily, and the reduction of both domestic and foreign debt burden in the next decade will yield positive results benefiting the country.
අතීතයේ ගෑති සුපිරි විශ්‍රාම අරමුදල ප්‍රතිලාභ අනුපාතයටද කිසිදු ආකාරයක බලපෑමක් නැහැ.
The Gampaha District Secretariat Administrative Complex Laksiyane Mantire was constructed with the aim of providing efficient and regular government services to the people of the Gampaha district. The complex was built with an expenditure of nearly 4 billion rupees. The event was attended by Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena and Minister Prasanna Ranatunga.
Minister Ali Sabri emphasizes the need for a global debt restructuring architecture to prevent smaller countries and emerging economies to swiftly recover from the continuing debt crisis.
He made these remarks in an exclusive interview with the CNB's American Business News channel.
The minister is currently in China to participate in the World Economic Forum held in Tianjin.
You've had a busy couple of days. You've met with your counterpart here in China, Qingang. What has been the nature of some of those conversations?
So basically the bilateral relationship that we have had over a period of time, there are a number of issues for us to discuss, particularly revolving around investment and the economies, and also some regional and global issues. So we have had a very good discussion with them, and particularly how China can help us, our next phase of propel growth, and also to face some of the challenges in terms of debt restructuring and debt burden which we have been undergoing for a considerable period of time.
How are those conversations going? Because we know that they've been going on for quite some time. We've just had this deal out of Zambia. They're going to be restructuring debt there, something that China is heavily involved in. How are you watching those developments, and how are your conversations going?
Our conversation went off pretty well. I met the foreign minister, finance minister, as well as the chairman of the Exim Bank. The chairman of the Exim Bank is the counterpoint here in China for us to discuss the debt restructuring. All those discussions were very, very fruitful and very cordial, and they have given us the undertaking that they will continue to support the Sri Lanka's next phase of development. In the meantime, as you very correctly pointed out, what has happened in Zambia, it gives us a lot of optimism and a lot of hope, and I think it's time that we need to have a global debt restructuring architecture which would help smaller countries, emerging economies and frontier countries, so that they could quickly get out of the trouble and get into the next space without get embroiled in controversy forever.
That's a great point you make, because many are wondering if that deal will perhaps be a template moving forward for other countries. I want to talk about your economic situation at home. How is it positioned right now compared to what we saw last year?
Yeah, last year had been a very difficult year for us, but since then things have really improved a lot. We have eliminated all sorts of shortages in terms of fuel, cooking gas and the food and the medicine, things like that, and we have no power cut at all, 24 hours uninterrupted power, and then inflation is under control. Probably we will get it down to about less than a single figure probably in a couple of months. Tourists are coming back, money is coming back through the proper channels, and rupee had appreciated. So things are looking better compared to what it used to be, but long way to go. We have made, as the Premier said, moderate gains during the last 10 months, a long way to go.
And you've got some quite serious restructuring talks happening this week.
Yes.
Can you talk us through what will be happening there?
Yeah, it's very important that basically we obtain the EFF from the IMF. With that comes a lot of conditions also. IMF has provided us a debt sustainability analysis, so we need to work towards that in terms of reduce the overall debt and also the external debt. So we are in the process of talking to several parties in order to restructure the debt. There are several parties, bilaterals, multilaterals, of course the bondholders like the private and the commercial creditors, and the local creditors.
Speaker Minister Mahinda Rupavahini has issued an extraordinary Gazette notification convening the Parliament at 9:30 am on coming Saturday. The relevant Gazette has been issued based on a request made by Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena and according to the 16 Parliamentary Standing Orders. And meanwhile, All Ceylon Samurdhi Officers Association alleges that certain political parties are attempting to use the Aswasuma welfare program to fulfill their narrow objectives. Deputy President of the association, Anil Mahindasena, made these remarks during a media briefing held in Badulla.
Deputy President of the association, Anil Mahindasena, said that the association is ready to conduct a survey to identify the recipients of subsidiaries of Samurdhi. He also requested the public to submit appeals to their relevant divisional secretariats if their name is not included in the list. He urged the public to refrain from falling for political agendas of some parties as they are trying to take political advantage.
And meanwhile, State Finance Minister Shehan Singh urged all applicants whose names were not included in the list of Aswasuma beneficiaries to file appeals before the 10th of July.
He said that the final list of deserving applicants will be compiled following the closing of the appeal process. The State Minister pointed out that this problematic situation transpired when certain parties attempted to satisfy their political needs through the Aswasuma program. He made these remarks joining a press conference held at the Presidential Media Centre today. State Finance Minister Shahan Semasinga said that the selection of these deserving candidates was done under 6 sections and related indicators. According to this, he said that a list of the eligible beneficiaries was drafted. However, he added that it should be noted that it is not the final list. The State Minister said that any individual or family who believes they should be eligible for this benefit but whose name is not included in the list that has been published so far can submit an appeal to the appropriate divisional secretariat officers within the allotted time frame. Additionally, he said that inquiries could be made if it contains the name of an ineligible person. We'll be back with more local stories after a short break.
வெளிநாட்டிலிருந்து பணத்தை மக்கள் வங்கிக்கு அனுப்பி வாராந்தம் 1 லட்சம் ரூபாய், மாதாந்தம் 1 மில்லியன் ரூபாய், ஆண்டிறுதியில் மாபெரும் சீட்டெழுப்பில் 1 கோடி ரூபாயினை வெல்லுங்கள். பீப்பிள்ஸ் ரெமிட்டன்ஸ் கோடி அதிர்ஷ்டம். நேரடியாக அனுப்புங்கள், பெரும் வெற்றி காணுங்கள்.
මානුවර පොත්දැක්ව 2023 ජූනි 26 සිට ජූලි 2 වෙනිදා දක්වා පෙරවරු 9 සිට පස්වරු 7 තෙක් කැන්ඩි සිටි සෙන්ටර් හිදී සංවිධානය ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොත් ප්‍රකාශකයින්ගේ සංගමය. මානුවර පොත්දැක්ව 2023 ජූනි 26 සිට ජූලි 2 වෙනිදා දක්වා පෙරවරු 9 සිට පස්වරු 7 තෙක් කැන්ඩි සිටි සෙන්ටර් හිදී සංවිධානය ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොත් ප්‍රකාශකයින්ගේ සංගමය.
Welcome back. We continue with news here at home. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal to allocate lands to the United Arab Emirates Capital Investment LLC on a long-term lease basis to implement a luxury hotel project by obtaining the agreement of the relevant institutions.
The relevant proposal was presented by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Accordingly, a land adjacent to Mausakale Reservoir and a small island located in the same reservoir, which are currently in the custody of the Ceylon Electricity Board, will be provided to the company on a long-term lease basis. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by Minister Harin Fernando to sign a memorandum of understanding between Sri Lanka Ports Authority and the Georgian National Tourism Administration Institute on cooperation in the tourism sector. The Cabinet of Ministers approved a proposal presented by Minister Vidura Vikramanayake over the repatriation of Sri Lanka's cultural artifacts held by foreign countries. Accordingly, a committee of officials will be appointed to take further steps to prepare an action plan for repatriating the Sri Lankan artifacts currently in various countries. A research project has been conducted with the participation of the Museum Department and independent researchers regarding 6 artifacts in the Netherlands. A project proposal was sugarcane cultivation and sugar production in Vaunia with an investment of $400 million has been submitted by Thailand's Suitech Engineering Company. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers presented by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to take necessary further steps for implementing this project. The proposed project is expected to produce 20% of the country's sugar requirement. Considering a proposal submitted by Minister Vidura Vikramanayake, the approval of the Cabinet of Ministers was granted to appoint a committee to submit a report with recommendations to introduce legal provisions to secure religious freedom and prevent insults to religious teachings. The Cabinet of Ministers approved a proposal furnished by the President to direct the legal draftsman to draft a bill to establish the Gambling Regulatory Authority. Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to a proposal submitted by the President to entrust the Secretary to the President for directing a formal letter of concern to take part in the Comprehensive Economic Partnership. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal furnished by the President to direct the legal draftsman to draft a statute for the amendment of the Banking Act No. 30 of 1988. A nib parasite has been introduced to destroy the whiteflies, which cause considerable damage to the coconut cultivation.
The Department of Agriculture said that the parasite named Encarsia Guadalupe will be introduced as a biological solution within an environmentally friendly methodology. The whitefly threat has severely damaged country's coconut, fruit and vegetable cultivation since 2019. The Agriculture Department said that this damage can be controlled using the Encarsia Guadalupe parasite. This new parasite was introduced by Additional Director of Department of Agriculture Prabhat Nishanta. Successful experiments have been carried out in Colombo, Kalutara, Gampaha, Batiklo and Chilaw areas. These experiments have successfully reduced the whitefly population from 95% to 5%. The department is expected to provide these lab-bred parasites to farmers free of charge.
The foundation stone was laid yesterday for the proposed industrial zone in a 72-acre land in Goluvapula, Alpitia area. The event was held with the participation of Minister Dr. Ramesh Patirana. The name boards related to 6 factories expected to be established at the proposed zone were unveiled during this event. The productions and the proposed zone will target foreign markets and expected to earn an annual revenue of $500 million. Factories which produce agri-industrial products will also be established at the proposed zone. The Sri Lankan Industrial Development Board said that the primary objective of this project is to create 3,000 direct employment opportunities. Handing over of the ownership certificates with necessary permits for the producers who are expecting to commence operations at the industrial zone was held during the event. State Minister Geeta Kumarasinghe was present at the event. The first phase on the Raigama Green Industrial and Technological Development High Zone in Kalutara was declared open today. In the meantime, the foundation stone for the first factory at the zone was launched during this event. It was held with the participation of Minister Dr. Ramesh Patirana. The industrial zone is being built in a 25-acre land and 25 factories are expected to be built in the zone.
Plans have been made to commemorate the International Tea Day, aiming to introduce issues pertaining to tea production to export process and modernize research pertaining to tea together with international and local agencies. The ceremony in this regard will be held on the 29th and 30th at the Talavakale Tea Research Institute. Many programs have been organized in line with the event to create awareness among tea producers and estate owners, factory owners and tea exporters, including the introduction of new tea varieties, improvement of efficiency, value addition to tea, improvement of standard of the tea leaves. Around 2 million of the population are directly and indirectly engaging in the tea industry. Around 200,000 hectares of land have been utilized for the cultivation and 60% of this land is owned by small tea estate owners. Tea smallholders also contribute 75% of the country's overall tea production. Therefore, Sri Lanka Tea Research Institute said that the priority will be given to tea smallholders in research and expansion activities. A special attention has been directed to improve the quality of tea supplied to the world market.
25th Presidential Export Awards will be held on the 23rd of November at the BMICH. It was revealed at a media briefing held in Colombo today.
We are organizing the 25th Presidential Export Awards ceremony on the 23rd of November 2023. During this award ceremony, we are evaluating the performance of exporters during the years 2021, 21-22 and 22-23. Those are 2 years we are evaluating their exceptional performance. Please remember, this is not just performance, but their exceptional contribution to the country's export and also to the economy. We are expecting about 1,500 invitees, including honorable ministers, diplomatic corps, government officials, well-wishers, and most importantly, the exporting community. For this year's award ceremony, there are 13 overall awards and 51 product and service sector awards for each financial year. So there are 2 financial years here. So this number has to be multiplied by 2. The panel of judges will be headed by a retired judge of the Supreme Court. So we'll be organizing this in line with the government policy framework. EDB has implemented new strategies to expand Sri Lanka's exports, and it is expected to increase Sri Lanka's exports substantially during the next few years, although we are currently facing a little downturn in our export performance.
The 8th Perahera of the Kathuragama Asala Festival is parading the streets tonight.
The procession commenced from the Kathuragama Mahadevalaya at 8 p.m.
Suraturi Kathuragama 2023 official media sponsor ChannelEye Rupavahini. Today is the 9th day of the annual Asala festival of Ruhunu Mahakathuragama Devalaya. The ancient ritual of hoisting the Anna flag at Sri Devaniyamman temple was performed today morning at about 7:30. Anna in Tamil can be translated to English as food. Food is given away free of charge throughout the year at the Sri Devaniyamman temple, what we call Dansala. So by hoisting this flag, it is hoped that everyone who visits Kathuragama can be provided with food and that food shortage or scarcity of food can be eliminated forever. And of course, the procession is about to commence. All preparations were made and it's going to be so full of light, color and sound. So much going on. We'll meet again tomorrow with the latest update.
And today is the 5th day of the Kandasorindu homage program.
ප්‍රධාන අනුග්‍රහය රටක් පුබුදන රයිගම් දෙවැනි එක 100% සහල් නූඩල්ස් කදිර දිව්‍ය රාජ චිත්‍රපටය අගෝස්තු 3 වනදා සිට දිවයින පුරා සිනමාහල්වල.
The parade carrying jewellery of the deities reached Bangavantalava today. The parade is expected to reach its final destination in Kathuragama on July 2nd.
And now let's take a look at some local news in brief. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena said Sri Lanka highly values China's continuous support to overcome the debt restructuring and meet economic challenges. He said this when Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Ki Sheng Hong, met him at the Temple Trees residence in Colombo yesterday to discuss bilateral relations. The Prime Minister made a special mention about the Chinese stand in support of Sri Lanka's sovereignty at the international forums, including the UNHRC. Indian Oil Company said that the efforts will be taken to restore the Trincomalee oil tank farm. An inspection tour was conducted today with the participation of Deputy Leader in charge of the tanks belonging to the company, Debanjan Mukherjee, and Governor of Eastern Province, Sendil Thundaman.
Minister of Tourism Harin Fernando said that Sri Lanka will implement the new tourism strategic master plan for 2023 to 2025 this year. Speaking at the Revival of Sri Lanka Tourism 2023 event at Cinnamon Grand yesterday, the minister disclosed that Sri Lanka will spend 1.4 billion rupees for an annual global tourism campaign, and it would be put to the parliament next month and would come to effect towards the latter part of this year. The minister said that they are targeting 1.5 million arrivals this year, but with the current positive trend they should touch the 2 million arrival target this time.
Yeah, so with the national policy we've been discussing, and also there's a special task force that has been set with about 5 ministers, especially when it comes to tourism related activities, fisheries, ourselves, aviation and power and energy. So there are about 5 ministries that is together in this task force in case of emergencies as well. But mostly wildlife is where we actually currently experiencing certain issues. So we are trying to see the process of how we can move certain places under our purview, which will actually benefit tourist industry. You know, the policies have to change. There are certain cabinet approvals you need to take. You have to change the system. So you have to change the system, not like the change system a few years back, but the system is changed. Now that's why it has come down to less dates. So, but as you took over, things don't change overnight just because you sign up as a minister, but you have to change as you go along. So I think that has happened.
It's a matter of applying ourselves improving quality of our product, maintaining high standards, and we should be able to achieve the set targets jointly. We have managed to bring down the waiting time to 49 days from what it was earlier for an approval of a project. This is of course excluding the IRAs which are required, which is not under our purview but comes under the purview of the environmental authority. But we will strive to get them also to expedite the process so that the maximum waiting time could be limited to about 75 days from the time an application is lodged.
Negative media can go on for years and years and years. To take that out of the mindset of people, it's very difficult, and especially with foreign media. When it comes to that, negative media sensationalism can be easily marketed rather than positive media. If you see leading news channels still, even yesterday when I was watching, I'm not going to mention the name, a leading news channel, still these images are on their trailers, on their international news trailers going on still globally. That's where we are. And at the same time, we are 22 million humans in Sri Lanka. We are not bringing goods to Sri Lanka. We are not trying to bring milk. We are not trying to bring biscuits. We are not trying to bring steel. We want to bring humans back into Sri Lanka. And how do you condition a mind of a human when you have an image like this? That's the task of the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau. It is not a promotion bureau, I want to call it. We are the 360-degree marketing arm of the tourism ministry. Let's start there.
Stay tuned with international news after this break.
Prima Katami, Fantamai.
Welcome back. We move on to news overseas now. Russian President Vladimir Putin has claimed that Wagner Chiefs' uprising was doomed to fail and said the country showed unity in the face of a treacherous rebellion. In his own brief address to the Russian people, President Putin said organizers of the march on Moscow would be brought to justice and described his old ally Prigozhin as stabbing Russia in the back. It was reported that the Russian president has thanked those soldiers as the commanders of the Wagner Group who made the only right decision, that they did not turn to fratricidal bloodshed and stopped at the last line. Russian president has also said that steps were taken to avoid a lot of bloodshed at the very beginning of the mutiny.
Prima Katami, Fantamai.
Welcome back with the sports update. And Sri Lanka managed to secure a 82-run victory in the match played against Scotland today in the ICC Cricket World Cup qualifier matches, and the match was played in Bulawayo.
Batting first, Sri Lanka managed to put up a total of 245 runs in their innings. Pathum Nissanka scored 75 runs while Charit Asalanka was 63. Chasing a target of 246 runs, Scotland was only able to gather 163 runs in 29 overs. Chris Graves was not out 56. Mahesh Theekshana picked up 3 wickets while Wanidhu Hasaranga picked up 2 wickets. Accordingly, Sri Lanka's first match in the Super 6 stage will be against Netherlands on the 30th of June. Sri Lanka will face against Zimbabwe on the 2nd of July while compete against West Indies on the 7th of July.